Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to SGN. I am John Krasinski, and that amazing opening was brought to you by Squad Harmonics. Very clear evidence that I have waded through the mighty river of unsolicited criticism, and my ego has come out safely on the other side. Or so I thought. This week, a whole new curveball was presented when I fell face first through the looking glass into the what the actual heck is going on world of fan art. That's right, for someone who only just got off dial-up this week, this whole internet thing continues to be a constant source of surprise and living nightmares. And finally, there's this four-paneler, which I have to appreciate as it'll be the closest I ever get to playing a comic book hero. In all sincerity, it is an absolute joy to see you all having as much fun with this show as we are.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. A lot of you sent me this clip of John Krasinski on his show recently talking about being comic book characters and wondered what this has to do with the reports about him meeting with Marvel recently, so we'll break it all down. There's a bunch of Easter eggs. Marvel and John Krasinski and his wife, Emily Blunt, have a long-time history with Marvel projects. Despite all of his jokes recently, they've been after him for a long time. So if you're new to the channel, we're doing that Amazon giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and let me know which Marvel character you want him to play. If you don't know what's going on, he's been doing this web show while everyone's been trapped inside their homes because of the lockdown and the virus. So he's been doing this show, and as he says in that clip, he waded into the world of fan art because for as long as you can remember seeing those John Krasinski Fantastic Four fan art pictures from so many different places, people have been sending those to him. When he was doing press for his new movie, Quiet Place 2, earlier this year, a couple months ago, he said that he still wanted to play Reed Richards. He hoped that Marvel would consider him. He would love to be in a Marvel movie. All of his friends are in Marvel movies. He's actually real-life friends with a lot of the MCU actors. So everyone saw this clip and then saw him turn to camera and do that Jim from The Office routine where he knows something is up and he's just messing with us like, oh, I'm never, ever going to be a comic book character. Like he's completely sarcastic and he will totally wind up being a comic book character. And there were reports recently that during the lockdown, he's had virtual meetings with Marvel about a number of different projects. That means a number of different characters, a number of different movies, and possibility of him directing a Marvel movie. So these would be my top 5 picks for the movies that Marvel might be after him for to potentially star in and direct, and which characters those would be. Starting with number 5, there's Marvel's Blade movie. Obviously, they already have their Blade, Mahershala Ali. They announced it, they didn't announce when they're releasing it, but he could be up to direct it. I think he could pull it off. His Quiet Place films, if you haven't seen them, are really scary, but they have these sci-fi elements to them, which feels like something that Marvel would get into with the Blade movies. A little bit sci-fi, a little bit fantasy, a little bit horror. Marvel hasn't really given any indication as to who the villain of that Blade movie could be. It could be Dracula, it could be Werewolf by Night, it could be another big vampire character from Marvel Comics. They could even work up to a crossover with Jared Leto's Morbius character if that movie goes well, but they've delayed that at Sony, so we won't see Morbius for another year or so. Right now, just looking at the Marvel Phase 5 schedule and the open dates that Marvel has, there's an October 2022 date where they could put the Blade movie because they tend to release the darker movies towards the end of the year. And if you're going to introduce vampires to the MCU, what better month than the month of Halloween to do it? But even though Krasinski could totally pull off the Blade movie, I'd rather see him do a couple other big projects, so that's why Blade is so low on my list here. So number 4, slightly more likely I think, Marvel has reportedly been taking pitches recently from writers and directors for a Young Avengers Disney Plus series. It'd be 6 episodes like all the other Marvel Disney Plus series and happen sometime after Ant-Man 3, which is reportedly introducing some more Young Avengers elements in addition to the other new Young Avengers characters debuting on other Disney Plus series. We have Kate Bishop Hawkeye coming up on the Hawkeye series, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk. We have both of Scarlet Witch's children, Wiccan and Speed, that are going to debut on the WandaVision TV show. We have Cassie Lang. We have potential for Iron Lad character or any other new characters they want to introduce from the comics. And even though most of my picks for John Krasinski's projects are hero-based characters, the good characters, he could also pull off a lot of the villains too. So with that in mind, number 3, Kang the Conqueror, as part of that Young Avengers project. They're supposed to be setting the character up on the Loki time travel series and tease him in some way. It sounds like Marvel wants to use him as a big Marvel Phase 4, Phase 5 villain down the road, so they kind of want to set him up in these early Phase 4 projects. It'd be bold and unexpected, but I think he could do a great job with it. But that's also kind of why it's a little bit lower on my list. In the past, when Marvel has been after him for superhero roles, it's been for good characters. If you haven't heard the full story, originally he was up for the role of Captain America before they cast Chris Evans. Chris Evans was not their first choice for Captain America.
Having a big audience for you must be a cool thing. Good for you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Good for you. You made it, Chris.
We'll see how it goes. Fingers crossed.
Krasinski tells this funny story about how he totally lost his confidence when Chris Hemsworth walked by him looking super ripped, because this was around the time that he'd just done the Thor movie.
I heard that you screen tested for Captain America.
That's
that
right.
role.
In my head, I got the part.
So when you had that test, what was it like?
It was a big deal for me because, I mean, first of all, I love those Marvel movies. I love superheroes. I love imagination. When they asked me to test, they actually allowed me to put on the suit. I was on a set. It was all very interesting. I feel like as I'm talking about this, someone from Marvel is gonna be like, and just like, I'm not allowed to talk about it at all.
Yeah.
But I remember the only bummer of it was I was putting on the suit, just watching it. I was like, this is so amazing. And I got about right to my waist. I was still shirtless, feeling pretty good about myself. It wasn't 13 hours yet, but I felt pretty good. And all of a sudden, Chris Hemsworth walked by as Thor, and he's like, hey, mate. And I went, I'm good. This is stupid. That's okay. I'm not Captain.
I kind of think things went down the way they were supposed to. I can't picture anyone else playing Captain America besides Chris Evans, but it's just a good example of how long Marvel has been after him to play a character in the MCU. His wife Emily Blunt was originally going to be Black Widow before Scarlett Johansson was picked for the role. There was a big scheduling conflict. Emily Blunt couldn't do it. That's why they went to ScarJo. So number 2, a little more likely, there's Marvel's new X-Men reboot movie. This is where we're getting up into the big-ticket characters everyone's been waiting for, Marvel Phase 5 stuff. He could totally try his hand at directing an X-Men movie, but I think the Russos have kind of called dibs on the new X-Men reboot movie. They are taking a break from doing Marvel movies because they've done it for so long now, but they did say that if they came back for anything, it would be to do the X-Men reboot film or for Marvel's Secret Wars. So they really love those characters and they understand them, which clearly they do because they're such longtime comic book fans. I would prefer that the Russos direct the next X-Men movie. But the cool thing about John Krasinski is that he actually has the range to play leaders, leadership characters, or weird loner anti-heroes. So my top picks, if he were to play an X-Men character, would probably be someone like Cyclops, maybe Beast. And even though I think he could pull off a version of Professor X, I just don't think that he has the right look for that. And the same thing with Wolverine. I think he could do a great performance as the Wolverine character, but he just doesn't quite have the right look for that. And he's even taller than Hugh Jackman. And people keep talking about doing a comic book accurate version of Wolverine. Wolverine is really short. If he were to be comic book accurate, this is what he would look like standing next to the other X-Men. We know a little bit more about what's going on with the new Fantastic Four than we do with the new X-Men characters. X-Men are a little bit further off, so this new X-Men movie would be way, way down the road, which is why I think it's probably less likely that he's up for something like this. Kevin Feige kind of implied that the way they're doing those new X-Men characters is they'll pop up in all kinds of different places before they show up in a new X-Men movie. It'll be like Spider-Man showing up in Civil War in a cameo, then going to Spider-Man Homecoming, then crossing over into the Avengers films. So of course, it should be obvious, my number 1 pick for John Krasinski in the MCU would be a Fantastic Four project. Now I definitely think he could pull off directing Fantastic Four, but because doing a movie that big, the way that Kevin Feige is hyping it up, is a really big reboot, and starring in it as the main character at the same time just feels like way too much work for any one human being to do. So if he does wind up doing a Fantastic Four project at Marvel, he'll probably just star in it as Reed Richards. But here's the thing, most of the time when actors get fan cast as characters, they don't wind up ultimately playing that character. But he spent so much time in his interviews earlier this year saying that he would love to do Fantastic Four, he would love to do a Marvel project. This could be one of those exceptions, so it's not outside the realm of possibility. Just in terms of origin story though, I think the simplest way you do that is that you do the comic book origin where they get hit by the cosmic wave, but it happens on Nick Fury's Sword space station from the Spider-Man Far From Home post-credit scene. And the way you explain how they got there is that they're just Sword agents or scientists working on some special project for Nick Fury. So everyone let me know in the comments, which projects do you think that John Krasinski was meeting with Marvel for? Which movies, which Disney Plus series, which characters? There was a really big Doctor Strange 2 announcement this past week. You can click here to learn all about that. Really good news. And click here for my Avengers Infinity Saga video for Incredible Hulk. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.